So, first you desire your journey towards dying before being dead. Then the entanglement begins because now you're walking the walk. Now, you've accomplished the task. You have no longer the capacity to be attached to anything. 3,000 years ago, it's not easy for the Buddha to just walk away. Dying to a father, emotionally, I mean. No longer connecting to a mother, to a kingdom, to a people. I mean, even in the story Moana, the movie, she just dies to everything, man. She just says, it's the journey that's important. It's the journey, And if you see the movie, she doubts. Even the gods doubt. And the gods don't encourage her. They say, whoever chose you for this task was ridiculous. You're ridiculous. We had at the car wash, we had a guy who would come with his truck and wash his car the first few years, and then he would never let us wash his car. He would just come and sit and talk to us. And he said, call me Chief. He was this really nice white guy. And so we started calling him Chief. And he hadn't shown up for about 2 weeks or so, and we kind of got worried. We went by his house. And his right leg was amputated. He was diabetic. And so they had to, cut off his leg. And he could no longer eat sugar. So every time we came to the car wash, we said, so Chief, what kind of donut do you want? Sugar-free. Okay. You have, enjoyed sugar most of your life, sweets. How the hell do you die to that addiction? There are about 10 of us in this room. What exactly are we doing here? We're looking for change. And I don't know how many of us are aware of, what exactly it is that we are looking for. That to how many addictions you have to kind of die, and how painful that is. The sort of awareness that it requires. Because addiction is when you do something over and over and over and over again. That's about 20 years of doing something on a daily basis. You think a certain way, you feel a certain way, you talk a certain way, and everything about your life revolves around the ways you feel and think. Everything. And all of a sudden you read a book, Daughter of Fire, and I say, yes, that is what I want. Or you're a young kid, you read the New Testament, it says, I want to live like Christ. You have no idea what you're asking. And what happens is you just become you go a couple of steps, you see a few things, you experience a few things, feel a few things, and then you become a preacher based on only a couple of steps that you've taken. Well, how many more steps out there? At least 1,000 more. How many have you taken? 2. It's a story that all of us know, but I think it's a great story. You know, it's about the four moths. The king wants to know which moth can best describe what fire is. And the king knows something that the moths don't know. The king wants to be spoken to by a moth that's dead. And none of the moths know this particular secret, you know. So the first moth is just lazy, or maybe just doesn't have the capacity. You know, just looks at the light or the fire and then goes back to the king and says, it illuminates. And the king says, is that all that the light does? You know, the king keeps pressing, but the moth says, yeah, it was dark, all of a sudden everything became lit. It's beautiful. We saw trees and the pond and this and that. You know, and it's a good description. I mean, there is nothing wrong with that. But, you know, it's like you have a teacher or an instructor, he tells you, well, write an essay on allegory of the cave. You know, you kind of string a few ridiculous words together, you give him like 2, 3, 4, 5 pages, and then he writes A+, beautiful. Well, it's a guy who just went to school, has read some philosophy books, reads your essay, says, that's not bad for a 20-year-old, let's give him an A. He's no Socrates. You know, Socrates would basically look at this kid and say, you have created a really nice illusion. You know, you're very deceptive. You want to make me assume that you actually know what the cave is and how life is lived there and what happens when someone becomes discontent and desires to live. I'm not being fooled by these colorful words. You're 20. You can hardly wipe your behind, much less leave the cave, you know. The second moth goes away, and, you know, but there has to be, you know, a discontent in the second moth, you know, because the first moth writes some books about the experience, you know, and the second moth reads all the literature about light and its powers to illuminate. But there is something about the moth, the second one, that is dissatisfied. You know, imagine if the second moth has, for the past 20 years, read all the literature out there about the truth about fire, and it revolves around, it illuminates, that's all. No one says anything else. There has to be a sense of curiosity in the second moth, a sense of discontent. Says, you know, the tradition says that's what fire does, it illuminates its surrounding. I wonder if there is something more. You know, you have to go against so many social forces, so many psychological forces within you to say, no, there has to be something more. Maybe the first moth and all the people that wrote about illumination, maybe they missed something. There is a lot of things to die to. And apparently the second moth has the ability to do that and gets closer to the fire and says, I have been deceived. I mean, at least the story was incomplete. It is true that the fire, you know, illuminates, but it also generates heat. You know, we don't have to all get into a hut and sit close to each other when it's cold. We can just light fire. It generates heat. And then hundreds of books are going to be written. You know, it's a marriage between illumination and heat. It's a great story. You have a 1,000-year tradition revolving around that. And the third moth comes around and says, there has to be more. The first moth thought he had all the answers, but that was proven to be wrong. What if this story is true about the second moth, that the second moth also is incomplete? I mean, not only do you have to die to illumination factor, you have to also die to the heat factor. You have to begin to doubt. And that's a relationship that you have to kind of walk away from, and it's difficult. And then you have the capacity to fly closer and closer to the fire until your right wing burns. There is too much pain in that. So you just fly back home and you say, yeah, King, it is true. You know, it illuminates. It's true, it generates heat. But there is something profoundly dangerous about the fire. You know, don't be deceived by all these different moths who say, oh, fire is great because it generates, you know, light. It's great. Very positive. You know. Oh, it's great that, you know, during wintertime all of us can sit next to the fire and kind of get warmed. But, you know, tell your people, if they get close, they can get burnt. Houses can turn into ash. Empires, you know, can be toppled by fire. This is not a fun thing to be around. You know, if you want to give people fire, tell them it's only for light. Or tell them only it's for heat. You know, don't tell them to get close. I mean, it's a really, really smart moth. You know, this third moth cares for its people. Doesn't go around writing books about, oh yeah, get close to fire. You know, yeah, illumination is not enough, heat is not enough, get burnt. You know, because the third moth understands pain. And the problem, you know, when fire is lit, you can invite your friends. When it's cold and you create fire and there is heat, you can invite your friends. But when fire burns you, there is no friend in pain, Cassie. You're alone. You have lost comfort. The price of getting burnt is way, way, way too much. And because of this, the third moth has no choice but to be honest. And, you know, goes around and says, no, why the hell would anyone want to get close to fire? Just enjoy the light, enjoy the heat. You know? I mean, what the third moth does, creates an underground community. You know, it's like the Gospel of Mark. You talk to the masses in one way, but people who have the capacity to go further, talk to them differently. Because most people, you know, are just, it's about the basic needs to survive: food, shelter, and clothing. The fourth moth, its story is just very, very, very different. You know, the thing about the fourth moth is it doesn't care about the illumination. It uses the light as a guide. It doesn't care for the heat, except that it's a guide. The more light, I'm going the right direction. The more heat, I'm going the right direction. You know, it's like one of those games that kids play, you know. Am I getting hotter or am I getting cold? I don't know what the game is called.
Okay.
What is it called?
No.
You know, like they hide something and you go around the house looking for it and it says, no, you're getting cold or you're getting hot or warm, you know. A fourth moth has another sickness, which is it sees its wing getting burnt, likes the pain. The fourth moth enjoys the pain, doesn't care about creating an underground movement where he can talk about this. He doesn't care about any of that. He doesn't care about sitting and looking at the fire. He doesn't care about sitting and getting warmed by the fire. He doesn't care about one wing getting burnt. He goes in closer and the second wing gets burnt. The legs are on fire now. And you have to be nutty. You really, really do. For this moth to say, I'm just going to go all the way into the fire. I just want to be one with it. If you're the first moth, you can write books. You're going to be invited to Princeton to give talks. You're going to make money. You're going to buy yourself a big house. You're going to buy a Batmobile for yourself. These are great stuff. Fame, fortune, they're all waiting for you. If you happen to be the second moth, you'll have more of fame and fortune. If you're a third moth, you can still be tempted by fame and fortune, but for the most part, you become very secretive. If you're a fourth moth, Cassie, it's all these stories you read in Philokalia, the Desert Fathers. Where some of them, not all of them, just a few of them. It's like a 4 or 5 volume book. And I think of the 5 volume, maybe 5 of those people are good. All say interesting things. But for the most part, they're just bumper stickers. But 5 of them, they remain very, very, very invisible. You have no idea who they are, what they are. Whenever their place gets to be known by the common person, they just flee. To be able to relate to any physical sensations. That's a great loss, Cassie. Your eyes are designed to look out there and recognize beauty unconsciously, intuitively, instinctually. It just does. You see beautiful trees, but you don't feel anything. You come to realize that, food can taste great, but it's from the beginning, of your tongue to near the end. That's where the taste buds are. Once it passes that particular path, it just goes down. You taste nothing. And you come to realize that, okay, well, who can nourish your ears? Who out there has anything to say that's useful? What can Socrates really do? He just kind of makes you feel dumb and stupid and praise that you live in this internal chaos until something beautiful happens, if you're lucky. But you already are there. You don't need Socrates. You're beyond words. And where do you want to take your physical body? What do you want to touch? Everything you touch just dies. And that's what happens. And once you're dead to all those things, And once you've gone through intense bouts of loneliness and depression and thoughts of suicide, if you ever recover from those things, there are things you see about perhaps human capacity. There are things perhaps you see about society. And now you begin to have a relationship with abstract ideas. What are these religions? They're all about what? Getting rid of homelessness, poverty, bringing about equality and justice. I mean, these are abstract stuff. You know. So will you experience yourself going mad? Yeah. You know, will you doubt the value of your loneliness and depression and the path you're on? Absolutely. Do you begin to hate yourself and everyone else? Yeah. Will you be envious of two people walking around the lake holding hands, laughing, having a good time? Definitely. Will you go home thinking that there is something wrong with you? Yeah. Can you endure that? No one knows. You know, but I think if you're the fourth moth and you've decided to go back, if you have decided to go back, I think maybe you'll be satisfied with people just looking at the fire and enjoying the light it creates. Maybe you'll be fine with people just sitting around and getting some warmth from the fire. You know, maybe you'll enjoy someone going very close to the fire and getting something about them burnt. The problem with that is you have to now sit there and hear them complain all the time. Oh, you know, I can't have fun. Well, what the hell did you expect? Oh, well, I have lost all of my friends. Well, what do you want me to do? You know, uh, I want to get married, but most of the guys or gals are just stupid. I don't want to be lonely. Well, I don't know what to tell you. It's not a fun place to be, both as a student and a teacher. You know, it's a great, great, great question. And I think it's always good to approach this question and all the other questions in a very basic way. Always go back to, the movie Philadelphia, Speak to Me Like I Was a 2-year-old. Why do you want to change? What has inspired you, this desire to change? Where has it come from? And there is nothing wrong with your desire to change. As long as you know how difficult it is to overcome addictions or habits in thinking, habits in feeling, habits in embodying, just physically acting on the stuff you feel and think. And then just point out all the conflicts, insecurities that bring about. I think all parents, healthy parents, I should perhaps say, human beings are selfish. They're self-centered. The moment a woman gets pregnant, and she goes through labor. Most women stop drinking, stop smoking, stop hanging out with people who drink and smoke. You know, everything about them changes. You know, it's like a 30-year habit just goes down the drain and they just become a brand new person. You know, parents do that. You know, it's, Sarah's mom, Alan, 15 when she got married. My mom, 15. If you were to impose our outlook as to what a 15-year-old should do, they should go to school. They should finish high school. They should go to college. They should get like a master's or a PhD. Independence, autonomy. Then, when they're accomplished, they should get married and have children. And that wasn't the case. In the middle of your years of having fun, you get married. You're 15. Your dream has always been to go to the park, but now you're pregnant. You get rid of all these things. And, it's not that women don't lose their cool, but they are enormously patient. And they adapt so easily. It's a mystery. If you were to put your question within the context of the relationship between a teacher and a student, the teacher is the fourth moth. It could even be the third. Sitting, a mile away and looking at fire, it's okay. It's stupid for the most part. It's good if you want to read a book. But that's not what teachers want. It perhaps hopefully will make you a bit more intelligent if you can just see the light, but still that's not really what they want. There's nothing wrong with the heat either, but that I think teachers have this need to like all parents who want only things that are good for their kids. Go to school, get your master's, get your bachelor's, save your goddamn money, buy a house, be healthy, be intelligent. It's a desire for every parent. I think teachers are like that. They're also parents, a different kind. And as a parent has to kind of struggle for about 30, 40 years to eventually, hopefully, sit back and say, thank God I can look at my kid and be proud. At least 60% of them are good. I think more time, when it comes to this particular path, dying before you're dead, it's 20, 30, 40 years. Depending on the relationship, how intense it is, how much love there is, how much attachment there is. But I think overall, Cassie, if anyone is able to overcome any addiction, any negative habits that are poisonous and toxic, you have to respect them. It doesn't matter what it is. You know, if you have a guy who's been addicted to pornography for 20 years and all of a sudden, you know, you have to respect that. If someone has been getting high for 10, 15, 20, 30 years and all of a sudden goes cold turkey, you have to respect that. You know, if a woman after like 20 years of raising her children all of a sudden says, I want to go back to school and make something for myself, you have to respect that. It's a huge change. Many things to overcome. You know. Who was that guy? Who's that guy? Russell something, a comedian.
Russell Peters.
Is it Russell Peters, the English guy?
The English guy. I like him, but Russell starts with the F.
But you know, he did like a lot of
Brands.
Russell Brand,
That's not
right?
it.
Yeah, I think so.
Guy?
Yeah, yeah, he did some, you know, heavy drugs, you know, and I don't know how he overcame all that stuff. He's doing a great job now, you know. He's interested in politics, he's interested in religion, he's interested in what we call spirituality. It's great. I mean, there's a lot of bumper sticker there, a lot of nonsense, fluff. But all that aside, the fact that he was able to overcome, you know, 10, 15, 20 years of all that stuff, it's remarkable. You know, one of the nice, perhaps best teachers to do all of this was Gurdjieff. He really was. What he came to realize is that when you do something over and over and over again, you create a habit inside you. You know, you create a relationship. And whenever you become comfortable in any relationship, it just goes bad. So he always forced people to change. You know, today you love Jesus. Tomorrow you have to hate him and you need to show me how you hate him. It had to be real. You know. And he always created this friction. And in this friction, the person was always alive, always on their toes. You know, no habits could ever be created. But people could only do that while Gurdjieff was alive and working with them. Once Gurdjieff died, it's finished.